is on.
Introducing
Pretty Girls Love Real Estate. Stories of everyday women breaking barriers and building wealth through real estate.
Let's get it.
Boss. BOSS.
Hello. Thank you for tuning into another episode of the Pretty Girls Love Real Estate podcast. And I am very excited. It's going to be a legendary episode. My guest today is Miss Adeola Adejobi. She's the founder of Avant-Garde Network, which is the organization that is responsible for putting on the Diversity in Commercial Real Estate Conference and the Women of Color and Capital Conference. And I feel like this is not talked about as much, but you're still an active attorney with New York City Housing Preservation and Development. So she's just killing the game all over. So anyway, without further ado, Adeola, how are you? Thank you so much for joining the show.
I'm well. I'm so excited. Thanks so much for having me. I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Okay, absolutely. Now let's jump right into it. We got a lot to talk about. So how did you first become interested in real estate?
So my interest in real estate started actually with my mom. So like any true Nigerian parent, reading is all they expect children to do. So she had an interest in it and she was working all the time and didn't have time. So she used to make me give her book reports. In high school, mind you, I'm taking AP classes, I'm doing extracurricular activities. And at the time she was working nights. So when I got home, that's like when she was getting ready to go to sleep. So she would be like, okay, tell me about what you read. So I would basically be telling her like real estate bedtime stories. So that's really where my interest sparked. And she also loved to look at model homes. And that's when, that's back in the 90s, late 90s, when subdivisions were being built out like all across America and especially in California. So on her days off, she loved to look at like model homes, interior design and stuff like that. And I just really picked up a lot of information just from being in the space.
Okay. And so how did your original interests kind of transfer over to the commercial real estate world?
You know, I think it was more so about just having like more knowledge. Like I was interested in like buildings and stuff like that. I just didn't know how those things came together. And so what I wanted to do was kind of like get into the space of ownership. And then but again, like you can look at a building, but you can't that's not going to give you enough information to be able to build it, right? And make sure you have a solid foundation and make sure you know how to do plumbing and stuff like that. So I wanted to get into it as a professional, as an attorney. And when I came out of law school, the market was down. Mm-hmm. So I couldn't start there. And I just built a lot of relationships from people, just from being in different local organizations. I think what you'll find is like, there are not a lot of people in the local organizations, typically, or even sometimes they just have larger and smaller events, but the smaller events is where you really meet people. So I was able to make connections after that, you know, listen to the information that they had, grab coffee and things like that. And from that and building that relationship and kind of sharing my interest more with people, I was able to, you know, hear about the REIT program. And so I got into that. And again, the market was still down at that time. So there still weren't opportunities. Like you can be interested, but getting the opportunity to work in the industry itself is a completely different thing. Right. So I really like hit the pavement in terms of like applying for jobs and opportunities and like trying to get to know people. And from there, I just, you know, really continued to learn and spent my own time and money just learning about the industry. So it's interesting because I wasn't a big TV watcher then. I'm not as much a big TV watcher now. But I found that once you love a subject matter, you're going to make the time for it. Mm-hmm. That's like going to conferences, going to events, reading books on your own. And so I think that for me, it's really just the forever student model.
Yep. When you love it, it's not work anymore. It's pleasure and enjoyment.
It's time consuming though.
Yeah.
It's time consuming to continue to learn, but it's something that can be done.
Right. So you talked a little bit about having trouble initially kind of breaking into the industry, which is what a lot of people have trouble with. They don't understand. It's kind of a a family-based industry or people that have had a certain amount of wealth for a number of years. So obviously there's not many of us, but you're doing something amazing to help, kind of solve that problem. So tell me about what was kind of the genesis of wanting to start the Diversity in Commercial Real Estate Conference.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was really about creating an experience and connections that I wish I would have been able to have when I first got, out of college or out of law school. I mean, we are a mid-level professional conference, and we do love students to volunteer, but I would say the content of the conference is intermediate. But what I found is that when people talk about diversity in a lot of these industries, the first thing that they say is that there's a pipeline issue. And I don't agree with that. I think there's an opportunity issue. I think that people are not willing to give opportunities to folks that have transferable skills. And, sometimes people just don't want to train their peers. But I also think it allows people to not have to come up with the concrete results right now. If they're going to say, oh, well, we're going to invest in high school students or college students, and not saying that that's not important, because it is, but if you're tasked to hire folks within the next 3 years and show results, you're going to do it.
Right.
If you're going to say, oh, well, we're going to start with creating this pipeline, then okay, well, that doesn't create the same level of accountability as having to come up with a metric and a result right now. Right. And so for me, that's what the conference was really focused on. It was really focused on us being able to create something right now. And also, in real estate, networking is really important. Like, you have to meet other people. You never know who you're going to partner with. You never know who's going to be in a position to help you. And what I found is networking online is great, but that in-person connection, when you're investing in a different market, like, you got to go to that place.
Right.
And you might not be boots on the ground, but you need to build relationships with people that are boots on the ground. So during COVID, I traveled to different markets just to meet people. Because again, you might not be able to invest in a new market right offhand, right? You might have to take time to learn about that market and maybe even partner with someone in that market, just because you don't have the time to be committed to a new market. So for me, it was about jobs. And I would say lastly, and probably one of the most important, was access to capital.
Yes.
Creating a space where I can bring together our financial partners that have said that they've committed to diversity in the space to all be in one place at one time. Because, we hosted a deal makers event, for example, and we had a ton of financial partners right there. The people who are supposed to be connecting with you as a Black or Latinx or person of color, emerging developer, or as someone who is just looking for information. I mean, you can go on, people can make 101 announcements online, but who's the point of contact, right? And so my goal is to make it easier for people to build their connections, for people to get deal flow, for people to build connections and get business partners. And the way I see it personally is like, I went to Spelman for undergrad. So
shameless plug.
Yeah, so I would say that's the number one HBCU. Now it's a shameless plug. But we were taught and trained that you have an obligation to help your community. And so that's what this model really is. And so for me, I wanted to create something that I see as like homecoming. During homecoming, you connect with people in a lot of different areas and majors that you may not know specifically. So in real estate, people are kind of like, you like heads down throughout the year. If you're industrial, if you're in office, and if you're in development, if you're in affordable, right? There's all these different areas. But at this conference, it gives you an opportunity to connect with people from all over the commercial real estate industry. And again, you never know when those partnerships are going to need to meet, or you're going to need to cross collaborate with someone in a different industry. But if you never have the opportunity to meet them, or to even hear about certain areas, I would say our community, Black folks, we are heavy in development. We're heavy in, and heavy in the numbers, but in terms of the
Right.
interest,
Yep.
we're heavy in housing. But guess what? There are companies that want to hire Black and brown folks in industrial, in
Right.
office, in commercial brokerage. But if we don't know about it, if we haven't heard about it, if we're not exposed to it, if we don't know the opportunity exists, then we just can't do it. And
Mhm.
so for me, that's also a part of the conference as well. Like for me as someone, I'm usually like backstage most of the time, but when I can break out, like I'm interested in the subject matter myself. I'm like, my background is not industrial, but I would love to hear about what is happening, know who some of those leaders are, and just have some insight. Because if you're interested in real estate, you're just overall, you just have an interest, right? It doesn't mean that you're looking to be an expert in that area, but it's always great to learn something new about that industry. Like this year we covered hotels, and I was like, oh, this is really interesting stuff. Like, I didn't even know, like, that's how the model works, and this is how you partner. And again, that's information that we can share with other people in our community that are interested as well.
Absolutely. And it's an amazing event. You started in 2019 and the last couple of years were virtual, but this past summer was the first time back in person. So like you said, there's no excuse for these companies that want to do diversity. Like we're all here in one place at one time. It's a one-stop shop. And can you tell people, or for maybe somebody that's never heard of it before, what type of like size are we talking in terms of the conference? How many people came out?
Yeah, so this year we had 500 in person, total about 650. So we're actually the largest conference in the nation. We were actually the largest conference in the nation year one as well too. So, and I think what was interesting then was I launched this conference at a time where a lot of companies weren't that interested in commercial real estate. We had a lot of companies say no. We had a lot of companies say no this year too. But I was just like, at the end of the day, I know this is something that our community needs. I know this is something that the market needs, and people show up, right? So I always say, don't count on me doing this for 20 years. So when we do it, I suggest you show up, because at the end of the day, like I am leveraging my personal relationships to make this happen for all of us. And the more people tell me that they're getting jobs, getting investors, getting business partners, it makes me want to continue to do it. So as long as the market is interested, I'm all about, doing it, and with or without some of these companies, like, it is what it is. But I will say, I'm really excited that we did have companies that came on board this year, for the first time. And that obviously I think is due to Black Lives Matter. I think it's due to, the killing of George Floyd. Like, I think that these companies are feeling the pressure to do things differently and look at things in a different way. And I think that it's important that we continue to keep that pressure on as a community. And that also speaks to like voting, right? Today is midterm elections. Like, are we voting for the people who are going to make it a requirement that our folks are involved on projects as MWBEs? Like, those things are actually important. A lot of money flows in commercial real estate from, government. And a lot of our companies as partners are also looking at, okay, well, we have our internal metric, but what's our external metric? If you want to partner with us, okay, well, how many diverse people do you have on your team? Are you hiring folks? Because that's a big part about the industry, especially in commercial real estate, controlled by a lot of families, and people hire their friends, their cousins, their nephews, etc. And that's not to say that they're not qualified, but that also doesn't mean that other people aren't qualified too. And so for me, it's really about broadening opportunities, broadening reach, and making sure that for those of us that want to be able to participate, that we can. And one thing that I'm extremely excited about with our conference is, for an industry that's heavily male, our conference has almost 50% women and almost 50% Black women that participate in the conference. So that is, that is a great feat in itself, to create a space where we feel welcomed and we feel like we're going to get the support that we need to share ideas, to partner on ideas, to partner with one another. So yeah, I get excited about this stuff.
Oh, I know. No, it's amazing. You're doing the Lord's work seriously. And like you said, it's so many layers. Like we may be just thinking about it from the organizational level, but you had people at the conference like Congresswoman Joyce Beatty, who we're talking about now lobbying efforts. We're talking about the financial industry as a whole and how we can, better infiltrate that system from a perspective of, just getting more diversity, getting money to the projects that we care about. So
yeah, I mean, policy, leadership, development, there's just so many areas that kind of play just into this. It's not a singular thing,
right.
Like, we need the companies to think about how they're financing and how they're underwriting deals. We need policymakers to think about, okay, what are we going to do about the policies that kept Black folks out, and the policies that we need to get people included, and even some other ancillary areas to the industry. How many Black and brown folks are getting opportunities to work on some of these construction projects,
Exactly.
plumbing, being electricians, like those fields make a lot of money. Right. So those are other aspects of the industry that we need to be thinking about as well, in addition to appraisal issue. I feel like the appraisal issue is like one of the number one issues right now. Got to be top 3.
There's a story every week now about somebody's appraisal being way low.
And those are the things that we know. Those are not the stories that we don't know, where people don't have white friends that they can have be in their house so they can get the appropriate appraisal for their home. So we need to be in those appraisal spaces. We also need a lot more rules and regulations around that, because our properties being valued less is stealing Black wealth. That's essentially what it is. It's the thievery of our wealth. And what has to happen is there has to be controls in place. And who creates these controls? Who creates these laws? It's politicians. It's those who write the legislation, and not just on the federal level. We have to focus on all levels of government, and we have to make sure that we show up every time. And I know this podcast, primarily, speaks to Black and brown women, and we show up. We do our part. Like, the data's there. We show up when it comes to election. I'm going to vote after this. But we also have to see what we can do to press our overall community to continue to participate in the process, because government catches up. Government is not going to do what they need to do right now. That's just how they work.
Yeah.
And as someone who's, in this sector, what I'll say, because I think just a lot of people don't know, is in business, you can do whatever you want as long as it's not illegal.
Yep.
Government can only act if it's legal. So you have to have enough of your folks that you voted for, who are all in agreement on certain legislation, to then say, we are saying that this is the new law. And that takes time. And so I want to make sure that we aren't discouraged because we're not seeing the action as quickly as we want it on the government side. I do think that corporations can act a lot faster. I think that pressure can make them do the right thing faster than government, because government just works in a different way. Yeah. But I think that it also means that we shouldn't stop because of it. I didn't let the fact that companies did not support me from doing the conference. So I suggest, I suggest we don't let some of these external factors, because there's so many great people that can participate in this industry, can have impact in our communities, but we have to keep trying to participate. And myself personally, it took me 6 years to break it. And I went to Spelman and Cornell for law school. So you can have the pedigree and potentially still not get the opportunity, but I do think that we still need to continue to try. And that's what really gets me excited and motivated, and makes me want to continue to do this work.
Right. And what you said at the end there is the crux of everything. It's not necessarily about your pedigree. It's about who you know most times, because real estate is always going to be a relationship-based business. So that's why we need events like yours to be able to bring us all together in one place, make connections, make business partnerships, and find out about things you don't even know about. So
right.
You're doing amazing stuff. Now, from a logistical perspective, like now you host it in New York, which is like the mecca of commercial real estate. Are there any thoughts of having it at another location at some point?
Yeah, this conference, people really press me for other cities. People press me. So the goal is for 2023 to potentially have, some sort of, at least some sort of regional event. So that people can have the opportunity to connect, with more people in smaller hubs, if you will. We'll see what small means when we do it. But, I think having the conference where people can connect from all over the nation is great. Hearing new ideas, hearing about what people are doing, but then also creating an environment where we can connect with one another in our local markets as well, I think is very valuable.
Absolutely. Well, you heard it here first. Might be
you sure
satellite events.
Oh my God. Now you guys are going to hold me to it.
You got it. And you got people out here like me that are willing to help you. So everybody wants to see it be successful. So I want to transition now, because another thing that you guys have done with Avant-Garde Network is before the pandemic, you were doing property tours in different cities, mostly in the Northeast. But one that was really interesting to me is you took a group over to Lagos, Nigeria.
Yeah.
So can you tell us about that? And then for a person that may not be aware, just what's the kind of the lay of the land in terms of investing in real estate over there?
Yeah, I think, what ends up happening to me is anytime anyone hears that I'm going to a city, they're like, Adeola, are you doing something in that city? And I'm like, no. And they're like, well, you should consider it. Then I'm like, no. Then I'm like, actually, especially if it's real estate related, I can always do something real estate related, because for me, again, when you're passionate about real estate, you're just interested in like just seeing the lay of the land, just understanding the market. So I'm really excited that we had an opportunity to partner with a brokerage that was in Lagos that year. I was already going to Nigeria, and then we just put it out there like, hey, if you're in town, like join us. But what ended up happening was people came to Nigeria just for that. And it was interesting too, because I think some people were like, some folks were Nigerian and maybe had never been without their parents. Or some people are like, I want to go, but I don't know anybody. So this would be a great way to kind of meet people and kind of connect with the network. So in terms of that experience, that year, we focused on Class A developments out there. But our goal, interestingly enough, for 2020 was to do something a little bit larger for people to come out for more business and industry, but also for people to look at opportunities for land. But because of COVID, we weren't able to do it. So right now, what we're looking at is potentially doing something, in Ghana and Nigeria in the future. I can't say when exactly. Coming soon. Hold me to it if I give y'all a date. But just use it as a way to, understand new markets. And again, like every market is different. And if we're just gonna talk about Nigeria specifically, the way the political climate is also plays into, when, why, and where. I would say for other African countries, maybe not so much, but I know for us, it's a very big issue. And quite frankly, opportunities in Lagos are actually extremely expensive. When we went in 2019, the cost of commercial space per square foot was higher in Lagos than it was in New York City.
Wow.
So that just lets you know how expensive and how capital intensive it could be to even be in that market. But again, it's really about getting comfortable with new markets and determining, where you want to be. I will say this, even as a Nigerian, I will say that, if you're looking to just, buy in a market, I would say buy somewhere that you plan to go to. And I find that, Ghana is an amazing market. I cannot deny that Ghana is a great market, I think, as an entry point. But again, you have to think about the numbers and the ROI. I think it sounds sexy to be like, yeah, I own in Lagos or I own wherever. But what is your actual return, on your investment? You got to run your numbers. And also in these markets, you don't have bank financing. So if a house is 300, that's 300 cash. And as an investor, you have to ask yourself, okay, well, do I want to buy something 300 cash, or do I want to take 50 or 100 and finance it and maybe get 2 other assets too? And also thinking about, okay, if you've paid for something 300 cash, like what's the rent that you can collect in that market? Who's going to collect that rent in the market? When something breaks down, who's going to cover that cost, right? I think those are some of the things that people don't think about. There's carrying costs, to real estate. And again, I'm not saying it to discourage people from doing it. I just want people to think holistically about, especially for people of color, because typically when we have capital, it's capital that we worked extremely hard for over years, and you want to be prudent with your actual capital. You don't want to lose it just because you got excited over an opportunity. So you want to really level set and say, well, what is it that I'm investing for? Am I investing because I want to pass down a piece of land in Africa to my children? And quite frankly, you might, if you don't build on that land, you could show up and somebody else builds on your land.
I was gonna say,
that happens. Like just how people squat in America, people squat in other places too. So if you're not going to be there, like that's something that you're really going to have to think about, in terms of why you're doing it. If you're investing for cash flow and you want to go to a market where it's cheap, okay, well, if you're in New York, go to Minnesota, like go somewhere else in the US where you can also finance and be able to get cash flow. And maybe it's just, it may not be an hour flight away, maybe a 3-hour flight away, but you can still get to that asset, easily, or a place that maybe you can drive to.
Right. Are there any restrictions in terms of, do you have to be a citizen or have a formal relationship with someone as a citizen to invest over there?
For Nigeria, no. For Ghana, yes. And I don't know exactly what their rules are, but I know Ghana is like more particular.
Gotcha.
But in Nigeria, you can lose your shirt. So you can lose your
buyer
shirt.
beware.
Okay, so just because the market is open doesn't mean that you want to just be jumping in there.
Absolutely. That's even in the US. Like there's a little bit more checks and balances, but you can lose your money anywhere. So, all right. So now I want to talk about the Women of Color and Capital Conference, because this is a somewhat newer event that you started. But like you said earlier, access to capital is probably the biggest issue that we have, especially in our community. And this conference isn't necessarily just focused on real estate. It's about capital for business, capital for whatever projects that you're working on. So tell us about that conference. And then it's coming up actually in October of 2022. So just tell us about why you started it and what can we expect for this year?
Yeah, so for Women of Color and Capital, I started that initiative because really, as a Black woman myself, who, was an attorney and doing all these things, like I found that it was still a struggle for me to get capital. And I also found that women were not having conversations about money enough. I think that at the time that I even started Women of Color and Capital, that's like 2019. And quite frankly, it seemed like it was a little bit more frowned upon in our communities to talk about money. And I'm like, no, like the more money we have, the more impact that we can make. And I found that there was an expectation that, there's just so much to talk about, like on the business side. I'm going to get to that too. But for me, it's about impact. How do we create more impact? We can create more impact in our communities, in our families, or in our lives when we have more capital. So the question is, how do we get it? And I had hosted a couple of events that year in 2018. There was a report that came out about Black women and consumerism. I read the entire report. I think the report is like 100 pages or something. I read the report, and what I didn't like was I found that people do all this type of reports for different reasons. But what I noticed was the angle was, this is a demographic, Black women are a demographic that have more expendable capital. And so they are great to be consumers of your product. And I'm like, okay, well, people are targeting us as consumers, but they're not targeting us to build wealth with our extra money. So that's why I wanted to create something and say, let's meet people where they are. So for Women of Color and Capital, we don't just focus on one thing. We focus on several things. We focus on financial wellness. We focus on capital for your business, whether it's venture capital, small business loans, crowdfunding, just different ways for you to get capital for your business. The women as investors, you have some extra capital, you want to be able to invest, you want to learn more, you want to be more comfortable in making that kind of decision. We're providing that information to you. And then last but not least, but women as emerging managers.
Mm-hmm.
The data already shows that women are excellent stewards at money. Yes. So why aren't we in this space? Lack of knowledge, lack of resources, lack of understanding, and lack of track record. And so that's why the Women as Investors track was really important, because if you want to go to a company and say, hey, I want to raise $25 million or $50 million to invest in all these other businesses, they're going to say, well, what's your track record? But the thing is, to have a track record, you have to have extra capital that you invested in a business that did well. And for venture capitalists, the expectation is not that you are going to, every company is going to hit. You might invest in 25 companies and one company or two companies hit. Mm-hmm. But where are we getting that extra capital to be able to make that happen? And what the data shows for us is we're getting that extra capital from investments for those of us that are making them, and there are not many of us, from our jobs in terms of promotions, but even still, data already shows Black women are paid less than average white male, 64 cents on the dollar. And then also businesses, when businesses get to the point where they have extra capital, that business owner is like, okay, I have this extra revenue. Now I can work with a financial advisor. Although I would say you don't have to wait, but that's typically the sentiment that people have. So what I'm trying to do with this, or what I'm doing really, is democratizing access to experts, to the information, so that we can be more secure in our work and what we're doing, and have the opportunity to do more and make more. And even with on our women and financial health track, if you will, we focus on salary negotiations. Mm-hmm. We're talking about salary negotiations in 2019 for women, right? And then also, I will say this, you know, in New York and in other cities, when bringing it back to politics, we have certain politicians that have introduced legislation that, you know, now make it where you can't ask what someone's previous salary was, because what they found was that was holding women back. If you were underpaid and they ask you, if you're making 64 cents on a dollar, that means white male makes 100,000 and you're making $64,000, right? You go to the next job, they say, oh, what was your previous salary? You say 64. They're like, oh, okay, well, we can pay you like 75.
For a while, were you making so low? Were you not, you know, a good enough or good employee of the same level as someone else? Like, why are you making a lower salary?
Right. I mean, I think that's true too. But the white male is going to get offered more than 100 because they know, hey, if he's good, I just have to offer him more to get him to leave his company. Right. So now that's a gap there. And the other gap we also have to think about on the salary side is not just the money that you're losing that year, but the money that you're losing over time. So if we're looking at this stat by itself, over the course of 10 years, Black women have $400,000 of money that is owed to them left on the table. So for me, it's like, how am I empowering this group, providing them with resources so you can go out and negotiate? We do salary negotiations every year. I don't care, because the data is showing me that we obviously need it every year. And again, you know, in our conference, we have multiple sessions going on at once. So if you feel like, oh, I've already heard salary negotiations and I feel like strong in that area, great. You can go to Women as Investors track. You can go to the venture capital track. You can go to the women, you know, business owners track. But for me, that's essential, because also not only just for our getting paid what we're worth and getting paid for what we're putting in, but then also we use our salaries to fund our businesses.
Right.
So now you have 30-something thousand left on the table that you could be investing in your business to hire someone, to buy more inventory, to buy more programming, to learn how to be able to scale up your business, to be in some of these spaces, to make the connections that you need. So for me, that point right there is extremely critical, because that is one of the key places where folks get money for their businesses. There's been surveys out there that show like over 90% of Black women business owners still have their day job. You put me in a category too. You know what I mean? So I'm in the category.
Yep.
So what that means is this first segment about being able to get the capital that you need for just being paid fairly is critically important. And now we got to take it back to the laws in certain states that are trying to change that. And that's why I think for us, it's extremely important that and critical that we continue to show up in those political spaces and make the demands of what we want. And if they're not giving us what we want, we go vote for somebody else.
Oof, you said a mouthful there. So when's the conference for this year? Where is it going to be? What are some of the like maybe exciting speakers that you want to tell us to look forward to?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the conference is October 13th to 15th, 2022. We are going to have we have the main conference in New York City, but I'm excited to say that with some of our partners, we are looking at hosting events in other cities. So this year, we're actually going to be hosting something in DC.
Yes.
During CBC week. So I'm extremely excited about that. That's going to be investing 101 with our partner, JP Morgan. So for those who are, whether you're familiar and you just want to learn more, or you're not familiar, you just want to learn some information and be able to connect and learn about how to start managing your money and investing, this is an excellent event for you to participate in. For me, the subject matter is what's key. Like if you come to our conference, you'll know I'm not necessarily about celebrities, and I don't have anything against that. But what I am about is introducing you to the experts that do the work daily. Mm-hmm. Not every expert is somebody who like wants to be seen and wants to be in the forefront. Some people are heads down. Yep. And I'm about this work, I'm about this impact in this way. And I think both of them, can operate in the same space. They're not mutually exclusive. So in terms of the content that we're covering this year, we're going to be talking about emerging managers. We're going to have people talking about fund structuring for those who want to be emerging managers. In terms of women as investors, talking about if you have additional capital, how can you be an angel investor? How do you source companies? For those who are on the business track, small business loans, how to apply for the small business loans and be able to get them, how to generate more profit in your business, because generating more profit in your business allows for you to get those larger loans, but also allows for you to have a higher valuation, customer acquisition. Like these are the type of things that companies are asking for. And sometimes we just don't know. It's like we're on a hamster wheel. Yep. And so what I do is I bring the experts who say, yeah, I actually evaluate 1,000 businesses a year. And I will tell you that this is what we're looking at. So you can prepare yourself for the future. And that's why I think that the educational aspect for me, in terms of how we build out the conference is extremely important. Because if we think about Black women, for example, in education, I think there's a reason why Black women are the number one, like the highest educated group, in the nation. And I think there's different aspects to it. One, the interest in learning and improving yourself and wanting to be in leadership roles, but also there is a curriculum. There is something that tells you after you do A, B, C, D, E, F, G, you get this degree after completing those things. In entrepreneurship, it's not that way. In entrepreneurship, it's people tell who they want to tell the information. People tell who they like what the business model should be. So what I do is I spend a year looking for the experts who have a strong interest in making sure that our businesses succeed, participate and say, this is what you need to do. This is how you need to structure. And I'm also excited because after the conference this year and moving into next year, we'll be having more digital programming for our audience across the board, for you to continue to learn with us, because that's what we want. We want to see that people are getting those investor meetings, there are those investor calls, that they're able to apply for these job opportunities. It's interesting, like we have companies now like, yeah, we believe in what you're saying about salary negotiations. And we also believe that we want more Black women and more Black and brown women to actually have opportunities. Right. So we're coming and we're looking to hire too. So we're bringing jobs, we're bringing capital, we're bringing resources, we're bringing it all. And I also think a big part of Women of Color and Capital is we're bringing fellowship. The energy in the room for Women of Color and Capital is unmatched. And I've hosted over 200 events. I've been doing this for 11 years so far. And I can tell you, Women of Color and Capital is the conference that you do not want to miss. Because when we get together and we're partnering and we're connecting with one another and we're building those relationships, it is just like the energy in the room literally is like what I relate to the Care Bear stare. And I'm probably, but it's true.
Like, now.
I know, but literally it just feels like the whole room is like one big hug, and we're like encouraging each other. We're helping each other out. Somebody might ask a question to I saw where people ask a question to, or someone asked a question to a speaker. And then after that, other people go to that person and say, oh, I also have another resource for you. I have another way to help you. So that's what we're really doing here. We're providing like that content information as well, but that community that comes together. And I think you see the same thing at Diversity in Commercial Real Estate. I make it a point every break, network, connect with people, talk to people. And as the leader of these initiatives, I think it's critical to continue to push that and continue to push the purpose. This conference is not for everyone. Like if you don't want to collaborate or you want to just keep everything to yourself, then this might not be for you. And that's okay. And that is okay. But for the people that want to connect with one another, want to help each other out, because the way I see it is this: when I help you, I'm helping myself. And that's not why I'm helping you. I'm helping you because I just want to help. When I help you, I'm like, okay, I'm not necessarily expecting anything in return. But me helping you, I never know when it's going to circle back. And also the reality is people have helped me. So why wouldn't I help you? I had someone help me this year with the conference. That's a Black woman when I was struggling to get some of these companies on board. And she said, look, I'm going to help you as a Black woman. She was a Black woman. And she's like, because nobody helped me.
Yep.
And let's just be very clear. I don't want to say we're out here by ourselves, but the data speaks for itself. The data speaks for itself. We have where a white male like Adam Newman can say, hey, I have an idea and get $350 million for an idea that he hasn't started. And we can have a 10-year track record bootstrapping and not get a fraction of that. And it's something I talked about, on the other interview where I talked about triple validation, where what I've noticed is in our communities for Black women, especially, people want us to prove our idea without money. Other people don't have to do that. Other people get money. They come up with a great idea. People give them money to ideate the idea. They get money to flesh out the idea. People expect that we do that. And mind you, we're doing that using our money from our job that's underpaying us. Let's start there. Then after you do it, people want to make sure that it's not a fluke. Oh, you did it before, but we don't know. We don't know. Could you continue to perform, even though you've already performed without help? So you do it again. And then after that, people don't want to be the first person to partner with you. If anything, I feel like that's where the majority of companies can come in at. Yeah. Some of these companies lose money every day. Why take a chance on a Black woman? Maybe that's going to be the t-shirt for there you go. For Women of Color and Capital this year. Take a chance on a Black woman. You took a chance on everybody else. And again, and it's not like we're not delivering. This is after we have delivered. Because we don't even get the conversation. Oh, where's your MVP? What's your customer acquisition strategy? How many customers do you have? What's your profit? And then even when you do that, you have people give us ridiculous term sheets. You have people give us ridiculous offers for being investor in our business. Oh, I'm going to offer you $25,000 for 40% of your business. Let me say something. If you don't hear anything else that I say, if anybody offers you that, no, the answer is I don't even entertain it. Don't call them back. Don't respond to their email. Those are sharks. And we also have to be very careful when we get investment too, because some people are in the business of taking your business away from you. So when you're building your business, you got to think about that. So when I was putting Women of Color and Capital together as an attorney, right, I have friends who have expendable capital, right? We're lawyers, we save, stuff like that. Also risk adverse. But I said, you know what I want to do? I want to put the women looking for capital in the same room as women who have expendable capital and would like to invest if there's an idea that they hear. So that's why we literally have a 360 model, in the sense that you can come in at the, hey, I'm just trying to get my finances together. I'm looking for capital for my business. I'm looking to become an investor. I'm looking to become a fund manager. And we're all connecting with one another. Like I've had people reach out to me and say, oh, Adeola, like I'm trying to raise some money. I'm like, oh, great. I know people who are looking for your type of business to invest in. That's what this is about. And also, again, providing that industry insight, because as we know, when you're in an industry and you're working at it every day, you know where the industry is going. When you're in real estate, you know what's happening in the next 15 years. Why? Because you do it every day. As a lawyer, you know what's happening in certain markets because you do it every day. It's your job to know. It's your job to know what's happening in the future. And so that's why I want us to participate in a way that also allows us to be even advisors in each other's companies. Those are opportunities as well, because you have that knowledge to be able to share. But what I find is, there's different types of ecosystems, right? Like the business owners are looking for each other. And it makes a lot of sense because it can be very lonely being a business owner, because there are not a lot of people, in that journey with you. Because business owners, we love our business. We talk about business all day, and we could talk about business all day. I literally this year I did what we called a workcation. We went to a different city to work. And then after that, we went to the beach and all that stuff. But guess what? This is about the work. Come, let's hang out as entrepreneurs. Let's brainstorm around ideas. And I hope that those partnerships, can continue to happen at our event. So for me, my job is to bring everybody into one room. What people do there is up to them.
Right. Well, one thing as you were talking, I was thinking about with Women in Color and Capital and DCRE is that it's like, this is a safe space for us.
Yep.
Like we go to events in the larger industry, usually we're one of a few. Right. And so we kind of stick together, but this is like everyone in the room is someone that's, knows your kind of issues, comes from similar backgrounds, knows your story about all the struggles that you've had. And then we can kind of, like you said, bounce off ideas. How can we solve these issues together?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I can tell you this. When that announcement for, Adam getting 350 million, let me tell you the number of entrepreneurs that we have phone call, people holding back the tears. Because for you to have an idea that you've already validated on your own, and people are making you, and people just don't, the thing is, to a certain extent, is let's just call it a spade here. People just don't think that Black women can do it. But we continue to do it. We continue to show up. We continue to support one another. So I think that when I think about those things, like we just have to remember to keep it moving forward. When I launched Women of Color in Capital and DCRE in the same year, a ton of companies said no. A ton of companies said, we don't think that this is needed. Well, is that so? Because both conferences that I had over 500 people show up from different cities. People came to New York, from LA, Atlanta, DC, Boston, Houston, Dallas, Philly, Chicago, and make it a point to find me and be like, I just want you to know I came from this place. Yep. Because I don't have this in my market, or I know I need this. So for me personally, when I think about taking it back to the homecoming example, homecoming charges me up. When I go and I'm in the room with Black Excellence, I'm like, okay, I'm about to end this year with a bang. Like, I'm about to do what I need to do, because I'm also surrounded by people that believe that I can do it. Right? Like, I see you doing big things. You know us. Yeah. I see you.
I'm just trying to be like you.
I'm just trying to be like you. You know what I mean? Like, and that is encouraging. It's encouraging to be in a space when people believe that you can do it. That's what keeps you going. And even people just saying small things like, keep going, don't stop. Like, I really encourage us to continue to do that. You might not be able to have, you might not have extra capital to be able to invest in somebody's business, but it doesn't cost you to share their posts on social media. Right. It doesn't cost you to send them a message like, I see you, hang in there, don't quit, we need you. All of those things help our entrepreneurs keep going. So I hope that we continue to do those things. And I feel like, and I can't speak for anybody else, but I do believe that I can speak for myself and what I'm doing. I'm like, regardless of whether this is a trend of supporting Black businesses or not, at the end of the day, I'm still going to be here. I was here when they weren't here, and I'm going to be here when they leave. So you have to determine who you also want to support, right? Who were the people who were trying to make sure that you had access and opportunities before it was a trend? And who are going to be the people who still fight for you to have opportunities when it's no longer a trend?
Well, the people that didn't support before, all you do is tell them when they come back, you tell them yesterday's price ain't today's price.
Definitely not. Definitely not. Definitely not. And also, I think for me, I'm excited to be in a position where I can ask those questions like, okay, yeah, we want to speak, want to participate. I was like, okay, well, which people of color are you sending? And then some of the companies like, we know we need to do better. Great, let me help you do better. You can hire some people at the conference, right? Like, you can invest. How many folks of color have you invested in? Oh, well, we're trying to figure out, we haven't found. Okay, well, let me help you find some people. How about that, right? Like, and again, because if you're coming to me, that's the conversation that you're looking to have, and we have to really be transparent and open and honest about where we are. If you're not about it, if you've been participating in this conference for a couple of years, and we're not seeing the ROI and the results, then let us know what we're doing wrong, but I'm pretty confident that it's not us.
Right.
So I don't want it to be that companies are partnering with us just to be able to check a box and say that they did it. Like, we really want you to be invested. We make that very, very, very clear. And our partners that participate, they know that. They've already got that speech when they come. So some people, they'll tell you, they were like, when I talk, look, let me tell you, I was having the follow-up conversations with some of the companies for DCRE. People have already started applying for roles. They already started interviewing. This is a week after the conference.
Yes.
People like, we already started. I was like, okay, that's what I want to hear.
Strike while the iron's hot.
Exactly. That's why we want you to partner with us. So for you to take action, we've done what we've needed to do in terms of convincing these companies to be there. And obviously folks have shown up, but the accountability still has to be there. And if there's something that's missing, if there's something that we can do better, we're here to do it. We're here to make it easier for the capital and the community to meet, for the community and the opportunities to meet. So when everybody shows up, it's up to everybody to do the work. If the companies are back there and you're looking for a role and you didn't go talk to them, that's on you, right? And you know, my theory is always this: you never marry your job. You're always dating. Your company's never going to marry you. They're not going to put a ring on it unless the company belongs to the person who owns it. And that doesn't mean that people necessarily want to treat you well in your role, but you never know when a better opportunity can come about if you don't even look. And I think that's something we can have a whole nother conversation on that, and how sometimes, and I wouldn't even say that we stay comfortable per se, or we get comfortable. I think it's just like, for us, I think there's another layer of, I'm in a place where I'm accepted as who I am. And that makes us comfortable in a different way. Not necessarily comfortable in the role, but comfortable like, okay, I'm finally in a place where I'm not going to be discriminated against. Do I want to go somewhere else and see what they're doing over there? Right. And I hope that we can challenge ourselves to kind of push against that in the best way that we can, so that we can get some of these other opportunities that are out there for us.
All right, man. Look, we could talk about the industry at length, ad nauseum all day, but I want to know what's up for you next, like personally. Is there anything you're looking to invest in? Any initiatives that you want to do outside of the Avant-Garde Network?
Yeah, I mean, I would say personally investing, you know, definitely looking at apartments. You know, that's the thing, you know, for us. But again, market research, capital, a team. You got to have a strong team. Like, there's so many elements that you have to build out over time, especially when you're not in a position to do it full time yet. So that would be it for me on the real estate side. I would also say I'm interested in just learning more about industrial and hotels. I don't necessarily know if I would do it, but if I would do it, but I do think, I'm like, oh, this is actually something interesting that I just never really kind of like thought about, which is why it was included in the conference this year.
Yes.
So, you know, just from an interest perspective, right? Because again, I'll, you know, forever student. For Avant-Garde Network, I think for us, I wouldn't say anything outside of, I really want to be able to build on top of, right? So now we executed this conference. People know, like, we're a mainstay in the industry. We are the largest conference in the nation for people of color in commercial real estate. Like, and that is no easy feat, right? Like, there's companies and organizations that have been out here for 50 years that can't get us all together. I do that, right? Black. So I'm happy to continue to do it. But also, how do I continue to drive impact every year? Like, this year, the conference was 4 days, you know, because I wanted to figure out how can I continue to create impact. So for me, I definitely want to continue where ideally we're doing some things throughout the year in different cities, providing more events digitally, and being able to build out my team so that I can continue to provide that, right? As business owners, we can't do it all ourselves. We have to be in a position where we have a team supporting us, where we can partner with people and get more things executed. So for me, it's about creating more of that bottom line, and not even their impact metrics, my impact metrics for myself, right? And doing that both with DCRE and Women of Color and Capital, obviously under the Avant-Garde Network umbrella that does it all. But I'm excited about the impact that we've been able to have, and the impact we'll continue to have. I've been having a ton of conversations since the conference. I'm like, and for me, the conference is not over, because I'm still having conversations with people like, oh, we didn't hear about this, we missed out, we heard about you, let's have the conversation. Great. But when you come to the conversation, let us know, what do you have for my audience? That's really my thing. Do you have capital? Do you have opportunities? Do you what is it? You can't come to this group empty-handed. You have to have something that you're providing of value to our group as well, to help us to be able to get to the next level. I mean, my goal is that this conference changes the overall industry and how we're able to participate in it. And I'm 100% super passionate about, continuing to do that. So, yeah.
Well, you're well on your way, and you're single-handedly making a huge dent in the industry. So I definitely appreciate you just for being so passionate about it, and actually putting passion to action, and making all these things happen. And, you got so many people supporting you and just wanting to see you do great things. So I know it's going to be bigger and better next year. I can't wait for the Women of Color and Capital Conference. I already got my ticket, so I'll be in the building. So, all right, I'm going to transition now to the last topic of the show, which is the Fabulous Four. And it's four questions I ask all the guests. So really quick here. The first question is, what's your favorite book about real estate?
Okay, I know, I feel like everybody says this, but my favorite book really is Rich Dad Poor Dad, honestly.
Hey, can't go wrong.
I think it's really more so because it's a mindset, right? And it's also a reset of where your mindset should be. First of all, I play cash flow a lot, and for those who are familiar with the cash flow game, I play it because it also reminds me, okay, what am I doing? How am I thinking about things? How can I be doing things better? So there's definitely that. I would also say it's not a real estate book, but I love Goals by Brian Tracy. Because I think that when you're like moving, going, you want to make sure that what you're doing is really in line with your core self of who you are, and not what people tell you that you should be. And in order for you to be in line with your core and for you to have that true happiness, you have to know what you want. And to know what you want, you have to take the time to write it down. And think about what you want out of this very short life, no matter how long you live, in order for you to have that self-awareness and happiness. So I really love that book. I think my first go at the book, I just read it all the way through. Then the second go, I literally spent 2 weeks thinking, meditating. I took, weekends, like just to think about the answer and think about what that true answer was for me, not what a Twitter quote is telling me or an Instagram quote. No shade. And it could, they're helpful. I'm not going to say they're not helpful. I love a quote with a lion next to it, because a lion is my favorite. That's why I love the air. But just thinking about who you are, because you can go, you can achieve, and not have happiness within yourself. And so that's why doing that self-work is also important, because it will illuminate through everything that you do when you know what you want for yourself at your core.
Absolutely. Fulfillment. That's what you want.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. The second question is, what advice would you give to your younger self just getting started in real estate?
Wow. I mean, it's interesting because I would want to say, like, think bigger, right? But the thing is, when I first started, I didn't have access to all the things that I have access to right now. Like the internet had, and I'm not that old, but like the people weren't really like using like the internet the way we use it now. We're using for research and stuff like that. And, you had AP classes, so you had to use it. We didn't have like the Facebook and the Instagram and the Twitter, where there's just a lot of information out there. I think now it's more about there's information overload. And you have to use you have to have more discernment about where you're getting your information from,
Right.
and who is who. Because the thing about real estate is there are a lot of scammers. So that I feel like we don't talk about it enough. There are scammers in real estate. You got to double check. You got to call around. And that's why having integrity in the business and building relationships with people is really important. So I would say just think bigger generally, but I feel like at the time I did what I was able to do. I was really reading real estate books at the time. I was trying to be a real estate attorney, but the market was down. When the market is down, what can you do? Right. So that would be my response for that.
Okay, cool. The third question is, what topic in real estate do you want to learn more about personally?
Oh, I think industrial is interesting. I mean, for what I'm looking to do in business, it would be more housing, more affordable stuff. I work in the industry, but the industry is always changing. New things are happening. So you want to stay on the up and up. But in terms of something that I just don't know anything about, that I'm like, oh, I'm curious. And hotels.
Well, that's the wave because, after COVID, everything is about logistics. They want to learn how to ship things quicker, more efficiently. So no, that's a good market, a good industry to learn more about for sure. The last thing is to give a shout out to another woman in real estate.
Okay, well, I have more than one.
Sure.
Obviously, I want to give one out to my great friend, Sonia Rockville. She's doing amazing things. I don't know if she's been on the show, but if she hasn't, she should be.
She's been on.
Okay, good. Sonia's amazing. So if you watch this, you probably saw that. So you know why she's amazing. Gina Merritt, Dr. Gina Merritt is amazing as well. I love her 100% real, okay?
She's going to be on soon.
That's great. She is amazing. Her episode is going to be great.
She's the GOAT.
Yes, for sure. Tammy Jones.
Okay, I got to get her too.
Yeah, Tammy.
Another GOAT.
Another girl doing amazing work in the business, closed her $400 million fund. I'm sure she's most likely going to have a fund that's larger than that, and just really the board chair of Reese. I mean, she's just doing such amazing work in addition to her role, right? Like she really does give back. I mean, all the people that I've named, have given back as well. Margaret Anadu, as well, definitely led a huge, campaign over at Goldman before she left. But, the women that I've named are really putting their money where their mouth is, connecting with people, creating opportunities. And I'm sure there's so many other, women as well. I named all Black women. I'm going to lift us up.
Yes. All heavy hitters in different areas of commercial real estate. So
yeah, and I'm hoping that in the future we're able to name more. So that's my goal with Women of Color and Capital and DCRE, Diversity in Commercial Real Estate. So next time I'm on, I want to be able to name more names too. And I'm sure there's people out there that I don't even know. So feel free to send me an email too.
Got it. Okay, so how can people get in touch with you?
Yeah, so if you're interested in Women of Color and Capital, that's womenofcololandcapital.com. If you're interested in diversity in commercial real estate, that is diversitycrec.com, and you can sign up for our newsletter and get all the information about every single thing that we're doing. And then you can always find me. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Instagram, Adeola Adejobi. I'm on Twitter. I'm not active on Twitter as much. If you're really looking for me, LinkedIn's the way to go. I'm usually there. And Instagram. Also, you'll find me on Instagram too. And give me a couple days to respond. So
yes, clearly y'all see she's got a lot going on. She's trying to lift up all of us. So
yeah.
Patient. Got it. So any last words of wisdom for the listeners?
Yeah, I mean, look, I would say, in real estate, since that's what we're talking about here, is like collaboration is key. Keep learning and, keep trying, don't give up, and be ready for the opportunity when it comes. And I do think, I say the be ready with a little bit of grain of salt, because it just takes so much more from us and for us. And so I want people to just have that information ready and say, like, a deal might take longer than you expect, like closing a deal, finding a deal, because we don't have as many tools and resources as some of our counterparts. But that doesn't mean that you can't do it. So there's that. And also, like, collaborate where you can. Like, get some deals under your belt and continue to learn. There's a ton of places. I mean, you know, there's DCRE will continue to do some stuff, and there's other real estate organizations that have information out there where you can just learn more. But the reality is you'll learn the most by doing.
Mm-hmm.
So to the extent that you have an opportunity to work in the industry, I highly recommend it and see it as getting paid to learn.
Yes.
But again, you know, for women, we have children, we have families, like there's more things that we have to consider. So just know that it's a marathon. It's definitely it's not a, you know, 100-meter dash. Like it's going to take time, but just keep in mind who you're doing this for. And I think for us, it's about ourselves, but it's also about our family, our legacy, and those around us, our community as well.
Absolutely. Awesome advice. Thank you so much for doing this. Oh my God. Like I said, this is a legendary episode. You said so many gems. Really appreciate you, just you as a person, and then everything that you're doing for us in the industry. So keep on keeping on.
Will do. I mean, thank you so much for having me. Thank you for doing this, right? Like the work that you're doing really gets out the stories of people that people may not know, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that, you know, I want to lift you and your work up and what you're doing. And I know you're always like out there attending these events and doing all these things in real estate as well. So kudos to you. So don't stop, to you as well. Keep going.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much. All right. Well, sign off here. I'm your host, Jessica Washington. My guest, Adeola Adejobi, founder of the Avant-Garde Network. She's the creator of the Diversity in Commercial Real Estate Conference and the Women of Capital Conference, and just all around dynamo commercial real estate. All right. I will see you guys next time. Thank you so much.
Thank you.